Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chris O Show. You could be listening on 88.7 FM The Bay, our partners in crime, or on MuskokaUnlimited.com or ChrisOShow.com, which we also are switching over to shortly. It's the Chris O Show. As you know, I'm Chris, the host. I have a very special guest, Dr. Raymond Rupert. Dr. Rupert, thank you for joining me today.
Hey, Chris, it's great to be here.
Before we came on, you were telling a wonderful story about your connection to our area in Muskoka. If you could please go into that a little bit for our listeners and
Sure.
those watching.
Yeah, so when I was a young guy, we used to summer in Muskoka, just outside of Gravenhurst on the bay there.
Nice.
We had Muskoka Sands across.
Yeah.
I'd walk up to the Gravette Boat Works. I loved
Okay.
watching them make those mahogany beauties
Yes.
and then see them and the Gravettes and the shepherds in the lake.
That's
And
awesome.
used to go fishing with my Uncle Sam. And
Nice.
I drove the 30 horsepower Johnson
Oh, wow. Cool.
out through the Narrows, out into the lake, and we catch all the bass you could ever want. So we used to stay at a lodge there on the bay called Wapaska Lodge. And one summer, this little bossy little 9-year-old lady called Bonnie showed up, and we were putting on a play like Sleeping Beauty,
Okay.
and I was in charge of props, and she was
Nice.
like really bossing me around and everything. Anyway, I survived, and like 20 years later, I decided to take cooking classes.
Okay.
So I call up this lady called Bonnie Stern.
Yeah.
And I say, I want to take cooking classes. And she says, what's your name? I said, Raymond Rupert. She said, wait a second. Were you the Raymond Rupert I was in love with when I was 9? So anyways, I dropped the phone. Anyways, I show up for the classes and we get married.
That's amazing.
So it was, and we got pictures of us at Muskoka, her bossing me around and all that stuff. But 3 kids later and one puppy, and we're pretty sad here.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. I love that. Like, so Muskoka is like kind of that, it's where your heart is in a sense in some cases because
Well,
that's where you found that, right?
yeah, it's almost sacred, the
Yeah.
lakes and the pines and everything. And then the connection to healthcare is one day I was working, I was chopping some wood with a hatchet and my finger got in the way. So, we wrapped it up and I went into Gravenhurst and went to a family doctor and he stitched me up in like 5 minutes. And I said, hey, that's what I want to do. So eventually I went to medical school,
Yeah.
became a family doc, and eventually went off and got an MBA at the Rotman Business School.
Nice.
And I started my first company.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And
That's awesome.
can I
So
tell you about the company? Is that okay?
yeah, and just like I was just gonna summarize a little bit, like I mean, it's amazing that like you said, it's a bit of a sacred place, and it's where you found your career and your love of your life and your family. I mean, that's amazing to me that that all ties into to here. And then you started your own business. What was the first business?
Oh, the first business I started was called, or is called, RCM Health.
Okay. Yes.
RCM Health. And the focus at RCM Health is helping people with very complex problems.
Okay.
So we get the most complex patients. And then when you're complex, you need a room full of smart people. So we have about 4,000 of those all over North America and Europe.
Yes.
And so we can take the patient's data and imaging and send it to Germany or France or Italy or Boston or Baltimore and get the advice and then come back and look for it in Canada.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And so we've been doing that for 30 years. And we help people with their transplants, with aggressive cancers, with kids with cocaine addictions, and all kinds of stuff.
Wow. So like, and that's like very useful. I mean, I love how you're using that as a resource of bringing everybody in, because think about how many resources you're attached to if you're going around the world to find information and advice and techniques maybe, right?
Yeah, we track about 4,000 suppliers. Like these are companies that supply different things, and about 4,000 specialists.
Wow.
So it's an entire global ecosystem. And if somebody's sitting there in Bracebridge and has a complex problem,
Yes.
we can kind of noodle it, figure out what's happening, get a second or third opinion, and then figure out where we can access the services in Ontario paid for by the ministry.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. That's very cool. And obviously that kind of helps so many people who maybe wouldn't have access to all this information and
Yeah,
these.
well, there are very few people that have this kind of global ecosystem, and we can provide access to global resources and then figure out how to unpack it in our own healthcare system.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that must help in terms of alleviating some of the stresses and stuff for, the patients or clients, however you want to call them, that come to you with RCM to access that.
Yeah, so we can get a specialist consult done in a couple weeks,
Yeah.
whereas people sometimes are on wait lists for 1 or 2 years.
Yeah, and that's huge. I mean,
Yeah,
imagine waiting
so
for 1 or 2 years and
yeah,
you're,
well, it's
you know,
very, very frustrating. And sometimes
yeah.
you like when it comes to neurosurgery, for example,
Yes.
it's actually very hard to get access. So we can get neurosurgical consults done and all that.
That's wonderful.
And then the other thing we can do is the Ontario Ministry of Health has a program that funds care outside of Canada.
Oh,
And not too many people know about that.
yeah, I didn't know about that.
Yeah, so we had this lovely young lady, 26-year-old lady from Ottawa, and she had a very rare brain tumor, and there was no treatment for her in Ontario or Canada. But she could be treated with a technology called proton beam. Okay, and there's no proton beam machine in Canada.
Okay.
So the father drove down to Houston and he signed up at MD Anderson, which is the big cancer center,
Yeah.
and she was ready to go. And I put an application into the Ministry of Health. And thank goodness the ministry came through with $300,000 of funding
Oh,
for,
wow.
for her treatment in Houston. So,
Wow.
yeah, so I was like a rock star in Ottawa for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So
Bet you
we
were.
had, we had dad 300,000 from the Ministry of Health. He pays for the treatment, and there we go.
That's amazing. And that was it. It was just a matter of applying, and because the treatment and the equipment wasn't available here, you were able to apply for some funding to get it
Yeah,
done
yeah.
down south.
Well, there are some nice people at the ministry. And occasionally they'll write a check,
Okay.
and that
That's
helps
nice.
out these families. So, we're just the kind of gophers that just make it all happen.
That's wonderful. And it's funny that, this is the first time I ever even heard of that. I mean, maybe thankfully that we haven't needed to know about that.
Sure.
But they definitely don't advertise that.
Oh, they don't like to say okay and yes, come on down and get your $300,000. But
Yes.
we've just because we've been dealing with complexity for 30 years, we kind of know the rules,
Yes.
and you have to meet the requirements of the Ministry of Health, which is
Okay.
fine.
Which is fine, yeah.
And on occasion they say yes. So
That's great though. That's
which
great that they'll
helps.
say yes.
Yeah, they will on occasion if you follow the rules and apply properly and you're polite, they
Yeah.
will they will sometimes say yes.
And if it's like, yeah, like you said, follow the rules, meet the requirements, meet the criteria, and it all makes it make sense to them, and like you
Right.
said, be polite. You catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, and or whatever the
We're
saying
always
is.
we're always polite, and that tends to work.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, you go in with a pleasant attitude and a polite attitude, and that does kind of tend to put people in a more giving mode, I guess.
Yeah,
So
tends to work. Yeah.
that's amazing, and thanks for sharing that, because there might be people out there listening who are like, wow, I'm going through something and I don't know where to find help.
Well,
Maybe they, you know,
rcmhealth.ca, that's
yeah,
us.
yeah,
And we do a free intake. There's no cost.
okay,
So we assign one of our doctors or nurse practitioners to do an intake, and we try to
nice.
figure out if we can help people.
That's wonderful. And you're doing this because you want to help people. That's why you started that. I mean, yes, it was a business and whatnot, but you wouldn't do this business and you wouldn't have become a doctor if it wasn't for that desire to help
Well,
others.
I guess it's kind of in my DNA.
Yeah.
We like helping people,
Yeah.
and it's very rewarding when we can help them. And, sometimes you can't, but you try.
Yes.
And that's what it's all about.
That's awesome. Now we got a quick minute left before we got to take our first commercial break. But before that, in the second half, we're going to talk a little bit about your newest project, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's called Healthy On, right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely. Healthyon.ca.
Healthy On. And when did that start?
About 2 years ago, we put
Okay.
our heads together.
Yeah.
I'd be very happy to tell you the story about healthyon.ca.
All right. Well, on the back end of our quick break that we're going to take for our listeners at 88.7 FM The Bay, and they're going to do a quick break in the programming. Then we'll come back. We're going to learn about healthyon.ca. Dr. Rupert's going to tell us a bit about the background and story, how that got started a couple of years ago. And if you missed any of this, check out muskokaunlimited.com or chrisoshow.com, where we're going to have it on there, and you'll be able to listen anytime. It'll be up there online. You can listen in your car. And thanks for joining us, whether you're on the air or online. Dr. Rupert and I will be right back. And welcome back to the show, everyone. If you've been listening online at 88, or you've been listening on air at 88.7 FM The Bay, we thank you for listening. If you're following us on the blog at muskokaunlimited.com or chrisoshow.com, either way, we thank you for joining us. We thank you for hanging out and listening to some really cool health stuff. If you missed the first half, please go back and listen to it. Dr. Rupert talks about RCM and all the great work that they do, and and he shared some information I had no idea about, which was always cool because I read a lot and I learn a lot, and I had never heard of a couple things. So go back and listen to that. Now let's get into Healthy On, which we teased before the break. And Dr. Rupert, please tell us the story behind that.
Yeah, I'm happy to tell you the story, Chris, of how Healthyon emerged. So as I said, we've been working hard at rcmhealth.ca to help lots of complex patients. And so we talked to lots of patients across the province in Muskoka, in Haliburton, and North Bay, etc. And we find that a lot of them don't have a family doctor. And the family doctor is really the foundation of healthcare. A patient wants to be able to call up their family doc. They want to go see them. They want to talk to them. They want to have a cup of tea with them and chat about things. And about 20% of folks in the province of Ontario do not have a family doctor.
Okay. It's
And
true. Yeah.
if you're up in the north, if you're in Haliburton, for example, your wait might be like 5 years for a family doctor.
Yeah.
So, I like complexity. So I said, okay, we're going to put our heads together. So I put a team together. We spent 2 years planning healthyon.ca. And it's really an interesting company, private company,
Yeah.
that works to increase capacity in the province so that everyone will have access to a family doctor.
Okay.
So can I explain it to you, Chris? Like how it
Sure.
works?
Please do.
Yeah. So the first thing is we have what's called an AI-enabled technology stack. So we use AI. So
Yeah.
if a patient needs a prescription renewal or a chest X-ray, we provide them with a secure messaging platform so they don't have to call the office. Like right now, if you want something to happen, you got to call 5 or 10 times.
Yes.
Often there's no voicemail or it's full. There's no email. So we give the patient control. We kind of empower the patient with a messaging application, with access to a chatbot with AI, and we're building a voice AI assistant. So a patient can call up, talk to the bot, order a chest X-ray, order a prescription,
Yeah.
book their appointment. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
the first column. The next thing is we bring in team-based care. And every
Okay.
family doctor wants to have a nurse or a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant to help them.
Gotcha.
And that's the secret sauce, because if the nurse is there, she can talk to grandmother for 20 minutes.
Yes.
The doctor can come in for 3.
Yeah.
Everything's already been done. The doctor can write the prescription and off he goes or she goes.
Yes.
So what we've done essentially is doubled capacity for family doctors.
Gotcha.
They can see twice as many patients.
Ah, that makes sense. Okay.
So we use Teams. We have all this technology,
Yeah.
and then we add something else. We add the ability to have a virtual specialist review of the case within 2 weeks.
Ah,
Okay, so instead of waiting a year or two for a neurosurgeon, the patients that are part of the system can have a review done within 2 weeks.
that's amazing though. Like,
Yeah,
and that's going to help so many people.
yeah. So then the question is, how does this all get funded?
Yeah. That's a
Okay,
big
so,
question.
well, because it you need those dollars.
You do.
Anyway, so we looked at what Netflix does. And Netflix has what?
Subscription.
Well, we said, okay, well, let's follow Netflix.
Okay.
So we tack on a subscription for like $20 a month or $30 a month or something.
Yes.
Not a terrible amount.
Yeah.
And patients can choose it or not choose it. It's an option.
Okay.
Okay. And then the money comes in to the practice, and then the doctor can implement the technology, hire a nurse, hire a physician assistant,
Yes.
and life gets sweeter.
Gotcha. Okay. So with the subscription that pays for the service, and then
Yep.
and then that subscription, which like you said, it's optional, but it is beneficial to be part of it.
It's
Um,
it's actually beneficial for everyone, whether you
yes.
pay or not, because
Okay.
once we improve the practice,
Yes.
everybody gets a benefit.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. So it's totally equitable.
Yeah.
Not only that, but just to keep everybody happy, we had an ethical review done
Yes.
of Halcyon. So we asked a professional ethicist, is Halcyon consistent with Canada's healthcare values? And
Oh,
the
okay.
answer is yes. This is really what people need.
Yeah.
And so we are providing this to practices, family practices in Muskoka, Halliburton, Peterborough, etc., at
Yes.
zero cost.
Okay.
Zero cost.
Really?
Zero cost.
That's
So
wonderful.
when the clinic, and say you've got, you know, a practice in Gravenhurst or Bracebridge with 2 doctors, they could bring a third doctor in,
Yes.
bring a nurse in or a physician assistant, and probably double their ability to see patients.
Yeah, and like you said before, it by reducing the amount of time that each doctor needs to spend with their patients, you're now giving them more time to see other patients, so they can stack more patients together, without sacrificing the care, because they're still being seen and they're still being listened to and heard, and their health needs are still being cared for. Only the doctor doesn't have to do everything that he would
That's
normally have to do, or he or she would normally have to do.
Yeah, the secret sauce is a care team
Yes.
that is collaborative and works to support the doctor.
That's good. That's good. And so that's what you're providing. I love the zero cost thing. I mean, and the fact that you were diligent enough to go get an professional ethicist come in and say, does this match? Is this what our values as Canadians, would dictate? Would
Yep. Yep.
and doing that? I mean, that's phenomenal. And the fact I love that you're like, here, we want you to be successful. We want every patient, whether they're no matter what walk of life they're from, to have equitable care. I
Correct.
mean, that's so important. And the ones who can, and the people who can subscribe to help
Absolutely.
support the system and help
Yep.
support everything.
Well, if you think about if you go to Tim Hortons every day, you
Yes.
know, for a month and compare it to a subscription of 20 or 30 bucks at your doctor's,
Exactly.
I think patients are getting a lot of value if they choose to subscribe.
Yeah, it's huge value. It's huge
Yeah.
value.
Yeah, they're supporting their community as well.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say. And they can feel like they're also supporting others by doing
Correct.
it.
You
Because
got
not
it.
everyone can afford that. Not everyone can afford even a coffee at Tim Hortons every day. But the
Yeah.
ones that can and are able to can feel good because they're supporting that whole system to allow others to also get that equitable care and come in and get the care they need, even if they don't have all the money to support it. I love that. I love that.
Well, that's a Canadian value. You step in and help others.
Yeah.
So that's what healthyon.ca is all about.
Well, that's wonderful, and I'm glad you're sharing this information and sharing this. I mean, not a lot of people would do what you've done in terms of build this up. And I know it's not just you. There's obviously other like a team of people working together,
Yep.
but to that you guys have done this is just incredible. I mean, it's obviously very selfless because you're not in it to make $1 billion. Like you're doing this for the betterment of your fellow Canadians.
Yeah. Well, as I said, helping others is kind of baked into my DNA.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll get to help lots of folks that don't have a family doctor.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I know it's a huge need up here.
Yeah.
Every time if it's funny, it's like almost 1 in 5 people I personally speak with are still
Yeah.
looking for a family doctor.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
So that's
Helping
just
others.
me.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
you start going around, the need is huge.
Yeah. Well, that's why we've committed to making Healthy On a solution for Ontarians.
That's amazing. That's amazing, Dr. Rupert. On that note, we're close to closing down. We're close to saying goodbye. Is there any last words you wanted to say?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity, kind of reminiscing about Muskoka, my teenage years and younger
Nice.
years in Muskoka, meeting my wife on Lake Muskoka, going fishing with Uncle Sam.
Yeah, that's
Really a lot
amazing.
of fun. So thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate it.
It is definitely my pleasure, and thank you for continuing trying to make healthcare better for everybody else, and being so selfless and caring for so many others out there. I love it. It's. I'm so glad that I got to speak with you about this and share this with everyone that's listening and watching. So all those listening and watching, healthyon.ca. Check it out. It's going to hopefully change healthcare for the better for as many people as possible. And like I said, if I know 1 in 5 people I talk to that don't have a primary doctor, healthcare person, there's others that So let's support it. Let's get on board. If you're listening on 88.7 FM Debate, thanks for listening. If you were listening on the blog, thanks for listening wherever you were. Thank you, Dr. Rupert, for your time. That's wonderful. And we'll say ciao for now to everybody.
Thanks, Chris.